morning, everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu. My name is Noel from University of the Philippines, and over here is.
Suhyun, you can call me Sue from KAIST, Korea.
Okay, so we're the representatives of group number 3, and we've been in charge. We've discussed sub-theme B, assisting students with difficulty. So first, Sue will take the floor.
Okay, we tried to collect all information and knowledges and experience from actually discussers. So we tried to summarize it, and then we're gonna end it up with a little bit of a recommendation. So I'm gonna explain the first part, and she's gonna take over the last part. Okay, so first of all, we tried to identify some difficulties the students may experience. Well, the majority of the difficulties you may be familiar with that, such as academic difficulties, isolation, or some emotional difficulties, cultural adjustment, and the financial grief, and also emergency crisis, something like that. Well, there must be more difficulties they may experience because the life is full of unexpected events. That's why I never expected to present again. So I decided to casual this morning. Based on the identified difficulties, we tried to make some kind of systematic approach to help them. The first, we tried to understand in terms of prevention approach and preparedness approaches. Well, it's a little bit tricky because we cannot simply follow the timeline. The prevention and preparedness can work together or interdependently. So please understand that little complex, the nature of the complexity. But let me explain the prevention first. Because, me as a counselor, I try to focus on the prevention because, usually typical counseling services help them after they already experience the difficulties. But it takes more money, more time. Sometimes it's too late. So the prevention is really important. So we try to provide reduction program before or after they arrived in a new country and university. And also we try to provide mentor advising, academic services, and help them to engage in social engagement program. And also we try to make a manual or protocols such as help them prevent some emergency crises. Well, for example, because in Korea, as I mentioned, the counseling services for international students in Korea is still developing process. So we don't really have a crisis management manual yet. So the person like me, we actually started to meet 2 years ago, and we almost completed the manual so that we can distribute the university in Korea. So once we have that manual, this will be really helpful to react when we experience some crisis. And the preparedness, we do orientation, but personally, I think that for especially international students, if we can make it as a mandatory, it will be more effective. Yeah. And also, we provide information packages during orientation or any other time. And also, we try to help students themselves, each other. So, it's common, but it's wonderfully worked so far. And also, the faculty advisor, because the students work actually with their advisor and professors all the time. So professor and faculty member can be an important role through these cycles. We're not going to deeply discuss about how we support the faculty members in terms of this picture, but in future we may discuss more about that. As I mentioned, since the nature of this prevention and preparedness, it can work together or interdependently. So maybe you can think that orientation may go to the prevention, or a stress reduction program may go to the preparedness. I think that is possible, depends on the individual institutions and situations. Okay, so once we set up this side, then we can move on to the recovery, yeah, and then go to the responses to expect to have them recovery. So responses, it's actually a main time for me, like counselors, to help them in the counseling or support from their own students. I think that some of the universities may have a student community, and so that they can help each other because, for example, in CAST, we provide English service counseling services, but even for me and for majority of international students, English is still foreign languages. So maybe just a native speaking students, they can touch a very deep and correct area they are needed. And then, we provided financial aid and peer support activities and still faculty advice. And once we successfully responded to their needs, then we expect to be recovered. Yeah. And then we try to set up reports, case reports, and also make a standard protocol so that we can share. And then also, it's a common for counseling approaches, but if anyone, staff, counselor, or faculty can use some kind of follow-up approaches to help the students, it would be good because student life is long, from maybe few months to several years, so they may experience the same or different difficulties anytime before they graduate. So we need to follow up. Okay, so we try to set up some cycles, and then, but we also have more important, issues as well. So she's going to explain about that.
So as we discussed also in other groups, each university has their own context. We do not all come from the same background. So this one, what you see here, is a compilation of what all the universities in our group does. But in reality, it's not applicable to all of us. So what we came up with is this. Okay, so we have a Venn diagram here showing two institutions, the home institution and the host institution. So it means that the middle part, the overlap, is in the institution to institution level, there can be an agreement to a certain extent that these things should be done. For example, our institutions should standardize, or have a uniform screening process. So, for example, to avoid sending students who will have problems, who will most likely have problems when they are sent abroad, we should carefully screen them during the screening process before they are sent over. So that can easily be incorporated in the memorandum of agreements. Next is we recommend that we can share data with each other, institution to institutions, like we can share survey results from the responses of our students so that we can learn from each other, the experiences of one another. So the experience of one can be avoided in the other case if they know that something like this, a problem like this, can be solved in this way. So case reports can be shared institution to institution. The concerned institutions will talk about certain cases. So we also decided that handbooks are very important, or manuals. So we also wanted to share these handbooks to each other so that we can learn as much as possible from one another. And most importantly, the protocols to follow. Like, there are certain levels of communications that should be followed. First is the host institution should talk to the student. If the issue is grave, then it should be brought to the level of institution to institution. So there are various levels of communications there. So what we noticed from these, what we compiled is, the key thing is communication. And it's on different levels. Student to staff, institution to institution, and even networks, to the level of networks. So what we proposed was, we can build a network to specifically on the topic of addressing like issues like this, addressing issues of students with difficulty, what we're doing now. So it's a network. For example, who are the attendees here? We can form a network and do the sharing specifically on this topic, because there are already many existing networks. So finally, we want to emphasize that for this to work, we need to build sustainable relationships, and that's exactly the theme of this workshop. So I'd like to give a shout out to our group members, myself, Noel, Su, Li Shuang, Jinik, Jinye, Hyewon, Manchi, Li Wei, Takuo, Shushin, Nguyen, Ti, Lije, Chisato, Sinto, and yeah, that's our group. Thank you very much.